I found out that I use humor all my life to cope. You can still laugh in the midst of your struggles. This is not about just making somebody laugh. This is healing. Life happens. PTSD don't care about life, and life don't care about PTSD. They are going to collide. And if you don't have tools to help you through it, it's going to be rough.
Breaking the stigma around mental health requires not just courage, but also creativity in how we approach these sensitive topics. Today, we have the privilege of exploring the inspiring journey of Vernard T. Hines, also known as the Laugh Therapist. Vernard served over 20 years in the U.S. Army, retiring as a Sergeant First Class after 2 combat tours in Iraq. Upon facing his own struggles with PTSD and contemplating ending his life, Vernard found healing through humor and therapy, ultimately becoming a certified peer recovery specialist. As a comedian of over 10 years, he has made it his mission to destigmatize mental health challenges through laughter. Vernard's work with USAA's We Face the Fight campaign, as well as launching his own podcast, offers invaluable insights into overcoming trauma and creating open conversations about veteran mental health. Vernard, thank you so much for joining me here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am honored to be here. I really am. Thank you.
Well, it's such a pleasure. I'm going to encourage our listeners right now, start tracking your walk using the Strava app, join the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran community on Strava, and let's jump right into how you approach post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, because you have a different way of reframing it. You kind of call it processing traumatic situations differently. Where'd this come from, and why is it important to change this conversation surrounding PTSD?
PTSD always had like a negative connotation, at least for me. I had an uncle who was a Vietnam veteran, and they called him shell shock, and they called him, crazy. Go sit in the corner, get out of here. You talking all crazy. So I didn't want to be looked at like that. So when the word PTSD came up from the doctor, I was like, nah, I don't have no PTSD. So I said, you know what? Okay, this man said that's what I have. Let me change this wording so it make it plausible. So when I said processing traumatic situations differently, I wanted people to understand and see however you processing it legally and ethically, that is how you need to process it. Mine's is laughter. Yours could be horseback riding. The other person could be art. The other person could be working on cars. The other person could be planting a garden. There is no one way to process your trauma. However you can process it to allow you to continue in life and continue to do what you do daily, then do it. And we all do it differently.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And with your uncle that did have some traumatic injuries as a result of his time in Vietnam, what then inspired you to join the Army in the first place, seeing the potential effects of what your service could do?
Well, I wanted to go to college, but my grades said no. So I couldn't. Like I said, my report card spelled Eddie. Okay, my grades spelled Eddie. So my counselor and my family looked like, look, you're not going to college. Your brother's in college. You're not going to. That's not your lane right now. So I wanted to go in the military. I decided to go in the military, and I didn't want to go in the Navy because I was from Norfolk, Virginia. They say if you go in the Navy, you're going to come right back home. I didn't want to do that. I was scared of the Marines. The Marines, I just always felt they going to do something, and them wearing them little tiny shorts, I couldn't do that. I knew the Air Force.
What do you have against Silkies?
It has nothing against Silkies. That's just 10% disabled. That's just 10% from the VA automatically when you put those shorts on. I'm just saying. So the Air Force, my uncle wanted me to go in the Air Force, but I signed up, but I had to wait. So I said, you know what? Let me go in the Army. I knew about the Army, so I went in the Army, and it was a decision that I did not want to do. I did not, but it was a decision, the best decision I ever made. To this day, I believe joining the military was the best decision I made because I didn't have any structure and I didn't have any direction. So that was the best decision I ever made.
Well, I'd say so. I mean, you ended up serving 20 years. We usually
7
don't
months
commit.
and 4 days. Let's get that right. 20 years,
Whew.
7 months and four. Please don't forget those 7 months and 4 days. They was rough.
Just counting down, waiting,
Yes.
especially those last 4 days.
Yes.
We don't commit to something that long unless we're getting something out of it. And a lot of the times that comes in the forms, at least for me, in return service, what I can give to an organization. That's a lot of my motivation. What were some of the moments in your career that really stood out that said, hey, this is my career, this is my life, this is what I want to be doing?
Leaders. I had leaders who impacted my life coming from my background of not having a father figure and then going into the military back in that time when your leaders really loved their soldiers. Not saying they don't now, I'm just saying, but back then it was more of a teaching, it was more of a upbringing, it was more of leadership. It was awesome. So I said to myself, I can do this for someone else. So leaders that I had in the military back at Fort Campbell in 1989, we are still in touch to this day.
Wow.
That is the thing that I took, and soldiers who I led, I'm still in touch with them to this day because I always respected that soldier. I didn't respect them for being just in the military. I respected them for your life, what I can do for you. How can I help you become a man? How can I, even though I had women under me too, how can I help you, become a better person? I was always willing to help people become better. And that's all I ever wanted to do was serve. I mean, I never cursed at my soldiers. I mean, even though back then I did curse, I never cursed at them because I wanted them to respect me for being a leader who can speak to you, who can speak and not you feared me because I had rank on my shoulder. Because once you take the rank off, I still want you to respect me. So that was awesome because not cussing at your soldiers when you got to Iraq, it had a lot of leaders who were treating soldiers kind of bad. So now we got to Iraq and we're like, hold up, everybody got bullets now. Everybody, these suckers I've been treating like trash, they got bullets now. So if you treat people with respect from the beginning, then when it's time to get into a situation where you need them to respect you, it will. So that was just my philosophy. I'm not saying anybody else did it wrong. That was just my philosophy.
No, leaders have such a significant impact, especially in the lives of these young men and women that are first coming in. Because a lot of the times we forget, like, yeah, they're wearing a uniform. Yes, they've been through training, but these are still young men and women that this is a new culture. This is a new experience. And we often lose empathy for those individuals, especially after we're coming out of combat deployments.
That's right. Empathy. I mean, if you think about it, I still know who my drill sergeant names were because they made an impact. You know what I'm saying? If that person makes an impact on you, you're going to remember. Commanders, absolutely. I still have those names, the ones that were good and the ones that weren't.
Oh, no, I hear you on that. When I talk to some of the guys that I deploy with, they can recall a few people that were amazing, but they talk a little bit more because we get stuck in this place of, we forget the positives.
We forget. Correct.
We forget those positives. So those negatives really highlight and stand out.
Always want to go back to the negative. No, we got to keep moving forward on the positive.
But for you, after 20 years, 7 months, 4 days.
Come on now.
You eventually transitioned back into the role of a civilian. And that experience is, one, very traumatic, especially because we've never done it until we do it. We don't know what we're expecting. And a lot of the things that were available to us may not be available or they look differently. So what were some of the challenges that you had to navigate through and how did you overcome them?
Struggled. I literally struggled. I left the military 6 months after I got back from Iraq. I retired from the military 6 months after I got back from Iraq. I retired, got my retirement papers in Iraq. My commander would not let me leave to retire. My first sergeant was saying, "What are you doing? Let this man go. This guy has served his time. He has done this." My commander was like, "No." So I have an attitude. I'm like, yeah. I have my papers. So 6 months after I got back, I had to retire, move my family back. So none of the help that they have now, we really didn't have. They ask you, "Are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody?" What I'm gonna say, no. When we got off the plane coming back from Iraq, do you want to talk to somebody? No, because talking to somebody mean I'm gonna have to stay a little longer and talk. No, no, no. I want to go. So it was very traumatic with the family integrations, uh, not knowing how to integrate the family back together. Then I moved back home, and I'm looked at as a person who did everything. Yo, you went to war, you retired from the military, you are this. But to me, I was not feeling myself. Something I knew was wrong with me, but we didn't know what it was. They said it was a adjustment disorder. I've been adjusting all my life. I understand adjustment disorder. No, something is wrong with me. Then I went straight to working for the Army. So I was in the Army for 20 years, did 2 tours in Iraq, my last couple of years in the military, left the military and went straight to working for the United States Army. My brain never got chance to detach from being in wartime, because even though I was a civilian working for the Army, we still had to do some of the same trainings. We still had to do some of the same PowerPoint presentation they were talking about, because we was helping the warfighter. So my brain was still engaged, and now I'm navigating family and navigating kids to the point I said, I wish I had died in combat, because I felt like if I had died in combat, I would have died a hero. If I had died in combat, they would have said, "Oh man, Vernard went to war. He served his country. He died in combat. Boom, boom, boom." Not Vernard went to war. Now he came back with PTSD. He's drinking all the time. He's not who he's not doing what he's supposed to do. He's not, don't have the job. He don't have this. So it was like a failure from being 20 years going to combat. Now transitioning to life, I felt like a failure. So I was like, if I had just died in combat, I'd have been a hero. You know what I'm saying? So it was very, very rough until I realized I needed help.
How did you come to realize that you need help? Because a lot of people, they'll look at their lives and they'll start justifying, well, I'm drinking a lot because, I don't have something to keep me occupied, or, they'll make up a lot of reasons and then try to muscle through it. And for yourself, you eventually asked for help. What was the process that led up to you seeking professional help?
One was having thoughts of hurting myself, having thoughts of committing suicide. That was, it was like, I have kids, I have this. Why do I have these thoughts in my head? Then hearing my daughter, I think she was 10 at the time, saying, "I'm scared of my father." I wasn't violent. I didn't go off on my family, but they couldn't come and jump on me. They couldn't come and be kids. They couldn't live a normal life with a father who run in the room and say, "Hey, daddy." You couldn't do it. So she was like, "I'm scared. I don't know what to do." I said, "It's time for me to get help. It is time for me to seek help." So going to seek help, hearing my daughter say what she said really sparked something in me. Like, listen, you are functioning, you're going to work, you're doing it, but you are dying at home. You are dying at home, but everybody sees you at work and you're doing your work, but you are dying at the most important place, home.
Yeah, it's really hard to make that transition where we stop prioritizing the military service. Because I mean, I remember when I was in, one of the common phrases was, your family didn't come in a sea bag, meaning that they are secondary to your life. But when you're home, when you're in garrison, or when you're out, family, like you have to start putting other priorities first, and the job can't be the thing.
Correct. Because they tell you, as they say in the army didn't issue you a family,
Mm-hmm.
but you want me to act like a family, a man when I'm home. It- it's so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because I'm still closely tied in with the military communities, and I know one of the big pushes for the Army right now is the focus on family and the quality of life when we're in garrison, right? And so they're really focused on taking care of their soldiers, making sure the families are cared for, have all the care that they need, access, family support programs, so on and so forth.
Because the families are really the ones that suffer.
Yeah, I love seeing that transition happen. But for you, how did your transitions start to happen from being somebody that your daughter feared to going forward and saying, "Hey, I've got some tools for y'all to pick up"?
When I started going to therapy and I started talking to my therapist, I asked my therapist, "Can you talk to my family? Can you explain to my family what is going on with me?" I don't know how to explain that to them. So we incorporated the entire family. Well, my two youngest kids and my wife, they went to therapy with me. I could not explain it until the therapist had a 3D model of the brain. And she took the 3D model, and she showed my kids, your dad has an injury. And when she said injury, that made me look at it totally different. Wow, I have an injury to my brain. And my daughter and my son, they looked at it and they understood, okay, it's not me. It's not us. We're not the problem. We're not causing dad. He has an injury. And we started to continue to grow. We started to continue to not walk on eggshells. I had to do the work and they had to do the work. That's why I call my wife my partner in recovery, because it made me have to do something and it made her have to do something to where we had to get together and say, hey, we're going to make this work. And also is a young man. He wrote a book about a lion for kids and had a fire in it. And it said the fire within. And it was a book for kids to be able to understand why daddy has that rage or that fire that was burning in him. And it was made for kids. So I took my kids to see him, and they got so much knowledge that I could not give them, that they understood it on their level. And it was a blessing. We stayed in therapy for, so I know, 4 or 5 years, because it was like everything that came up, we still had to discuss it. When my daughter was going to college, my therapist had to bring me in and be like, listen, she's going to college. She's not going to be home every day. You're going to have to understand, because, when you got this hyper vigilant, you want to make sure everything okay. Now you got to let go. So people ask me, why you still go to therapy? Because I still have to understand and deal with life. Life happens. PTSD don't care about life, and life don't care about PTSD. They are going to collide. And if you don't have tools to help you through it, it's going to be rough.
That's so good. And it's amazing. When I first got married, I was already going through therapy for a couple of years. And then when I got married, I invited my wife to the counselor's office with us so that she could understand from a doctor's perspective, a counselor's perspective, a bit of what I was going to be experiencing. Because the way that I would explain it to her is, I'm responsible for my emotions. These are my responsibility. There's nothing that you can do that's actually your fault that triggers me. Like, triggers are just triggers. I can't associate a trigger with you, but you're going to hit them because it's a minefield. We don't know what's going to happen. And it really served both of us. But like you said, it's a long-term thing, because as life's happening, new triggers come up, new experiences come up. So as you're working through this, because I'm imagining at this point you're probably in your late 30s, early 40s.
Yep.
Military service members are young people,
Correct.
Even when we retire.
Correct.
How long do you think it took you and your family to navigate through this situation to get to the point where, the doctor used to tell my wife, like, don't get mad at him, acknowledge that it's the injury within him that's causing him to lash out. Learn to have some grace and do that kind of more reflexively versus everything's a big blow up fight.
Right. Well, we had extra. We was a blended family, so that added.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that added. The kids came to live with us, so it was added. But it was just constantly, and being our faith helped tremendously. But just being able to laugh. Okay, laughter has been one of the most beautiful. I met my wife at a comedy club. So laughter has been one of the most one of the most prevalent things in our life, in our marriage, our kids. We laugh consistently. If we have a disagreement we will go back and we will find things to laugh about. Like, I can't believe you was acting like that. And then we would laugh. Or my daughter would come up to me because we do videos. We do car videos and we do videos online that has been going on since 2020. And that has been a way for us to outlet what is going on to sometimes to be like, it's really not as big as it seems. Once you can sit back and laugh at it. Now, everything is not a laughing matter, but some things is like, it ain't that serious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that serious. So we just learned how to just continue to do what we do. And when my daughter, she's in college, and when she was having the issue, she knew I need to go talk to a therapist to help me through this. Because in high school, it was during COVID. Her last 2 years of high school was COVID. So she get to college, and now we're in classroom, we doing all this. So that has always been part of our life, going to therapy, not because something is always wrong, but how can I navigate this portion right here that's going on in my life?
Yeah, so it sounds like your family also uses therapy as like a preventative measure so that things don't get to a crisis point.
There you go. That is, I like that. I'm gonna steal that. But yeah.
Please have it, share it. That's what I try to tell people. I'm like,
Yeah.
A lot of the work that I do, I do regular check-ins with my doctor, not because I'm sick, but because I can be sick and I know what being sick feels like.
There you go. And preventable measures.
Exactly.
It is not all because something is wrong. It's like, look, I got something that's coming up. My daughter's going to college. I don't know how I'm going to navigate that. Can you help me through it? What are some tools we can help through? And I tell people when I talk to folks and stuff, I say, all you're getting is what my therapist gives me. And I tell my therapist, I'm going to give out what you give me, because some people will never go to therapy. Some people will never go and talk to someone, and they're killing their family. They're killing themselves. And therapy is not a bad thing. I don't care what people say. Well, I don't need to go and talk. Maybe that's you. I needed to go and talk to somebody, because if we really think about it, some of this stuff is stemming from childhood, and it now is in your adulthood. And if you keep sweeping stuff under the rug, you're going to trip over every time you walk.
Absolutely.
If you keep sweeping under the rug, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And all you're going to do is keep tripping over it until one day you can be like, why am I keep tripping over the same thing?
Absolutely. So when did you realize that humor could be a healing tool for yourself, and then decide to bring that to others that are dealing with PTSD and these traumatic events?
Well, going to therapy, I found out that I use humor all my life to cope with not being accepted. Okay. As a child, I would really tell people how I feel. And then if they didn't like it, I'd be like, man, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I was always the class clown. I'm not gonna say class clown. I was class comedian, because I was funny back then too. I used to listen to Richard Pryor. I was an unsupervised child, because I used to listen to Richard Pryor albums from age 12 to 15. I knew all of his material, and that is crazy for a child. I used to listen to his records, just sit on the floor and listen to. I'm serious. When I got in the military, I was always the barbecue comedian. You bring me to a barbecue, we gonna have a great time. I was quick with it, could cut folks, could make folks laugh, but that was my way of being accepted. If I could just get in and be the funny person and make folks laugh, I felt that's the only way I could be accepted. I had true low self-esteem. As fine as I am and good looking as I am, I had low self-esteem. So when I was leaving Oklahoma, a young lady said, let me tell you something. It was in my church. When you get to Virginia, you need to pursue comedy for real. You have been around here killing us, making us die laughing. But I never had the courage to think I could do it. So while I was home, I was going through my stuff. I was going through my issues. But a young lady told me, she said, what you gonna do with this comedy stuff? And her husband gave me $250 because I was broke as a joke back then. House was in foreclosure. All my bills was behind. Trust me, they gave me $250 to go to a comedy class. I went to the class. I won the competition twice. And from that day, I said, I can do this. So I was using that for me. But then I realized in my comedy, I spoke to veterans. I used my experience and to hear people coming up to me and say, hey, man, I can relate to what you're talking about. Then I partnered with the Wounded Warriors and I started doing comedy shows for veterans. And to hear spouses come up to my wife and say, I haven't seen him laugh in 6 or 7 months. So I started saying, this is relatable. This is not about just making somebody laugh. This is healing. So when I got with a friend of mine and he told me, he said, hey, man, because my other comedy name was crazy. He said, you need to come up with another name. So we brainstormed. He said, so what got you to where you are now? I said, laughter and a therapist. He said, won't you call yourself the laugh therapist? Wow. That was 2011. And I have been doing this for that many years, speaking, going to churches, going to the VA hospital, going to comedy clubs, going anywhere, because I tell folks, this is actually my therapy. You just get the residue of what I'm giving off. And I just want to give this laughter to people to say, you can still laugh in the midst of your struggles, because at one time I couldn't laugh. And that's the person I want to reach, that person that feel I have no reason to laugh. There's always a reason to laugh and smile, but we got to find it. That's the key. We got to find it. And once I found it, I took off and I ran with it. And it's going places I never assumed, never thought, never understand why I have done comedy in front of 10,000. I've done comedy in front of 5. It doesn't matter to me because this is my therapy. In this brain right here, my cognitive is so good once I get off stage. It's like, I love it. I love it.
As the laugh therapist and using laughter as your personal therapy, how do you find the balance? Because a lot of veterans will use dark humor to avoid. And you even mentioned it. You used it as a coping and avoidance mechanism to deal with some harder things in life, that feeling of acceptance. So how do you now balance the comedy with the weight of these challenges, especially when discussing really difficult things?
Correct.
Like suicide prevention that you do with We Face the Fight.
Correct. I tell people who try to get into comedy and try to get into speaking or anything, do not speak about anything you're not healed from. If you're not healed from it, please don't. I say this because if you're not healed from it, you're going to start speaking, you're going to start joking, and then it's going to turn into anger, and then you're going to come in that dark stuff, and somebody can get upset. You be like, I don't care about you getting upset. This is my trauma. I'm talking. That's not comedy. Now you're fighting. now you're sitting out here fighting. I use it to where I talk about myself. I don't joke on anybody in the audience, but my first statement is you're going to see yourself in all these jokes. So if I'm talking about myself, if I'm talking about issues that we all can relate to, you can be like, yeah, I see myself doing that. Yeah. And I have done comedy and I've seen the spouse turn, the wife turn to the husband or the husband turn to the veteran and be like, Yeah, you, that's you. That's you. And when they say that, it's not a fight now. It's like, yeah, I do act like that. I do act like that. And me and my wife have talked about some of our issues so much that we put a spin on it to where I just wanted to be palatable for people to be able to talk about rough stuff and still have humor in it, because humor can break up so much stuff that people just don't know. If you just dark humor, to me, is people can use dark humor. That's their thing. I don't want to go back dark. I don't want to go into a dark place. I've been in a dark place. I've been in a dark place, and in dark places is when you have secrets, when you hiding. No, I want this to be out, because I want to be able to go anywhere and do my comedy. I want to be, when you say you bringing in a laugh therapist, you're going to get some clean, you're going to get funny, you're going to get relatable, and you're going to walk away with like, that's the type of person I want to be when I get on the stage and when I get off the stage. And I want you to be able to pee on yourself too. I want to be so funny that you actually pee on yourself. That's it. That's you leave there, you be like, I got this boy done made me. So is knowing that you are helping someone, because I'm telling you, Danny, at one point in my life, I felt like I had nothing to give. When I left the military, it was like, I have no more soldiers. I can't command nothing. I'm not a sergeant. I'm not in charge of nothing. I'm starting over from scratch. Once I got into comedy and speaking and realized I have something to give, it was a breath of fresh air. To have something to give back is a beautiful thing, because we in this life for service. What you're doing, no one is in this life to say, I'm just here by myself. No. We're here to help others.
Hey, man, I will say your humor is absolutely fantastic. And my wife and I, when we saw you at the Mick this past year, she did look over and she goes, see, I told you. Luckily, I didn't wet myself, because I'm just, I'm not that old yet. I got some aches and pains, but I'm not that old yet.
I like it, because you can see yourself in other people and be like, yeah, I do act like that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things one of the lessons in life that I carry with me comes from my dad. He had told me patience is a virtue. And I used to think that this was about things like, the school day or wanting, something for my birthday, or like there's an upcoming event and I'm waiting for it. And as I've gotten older and I've navigated life after service, I've realized that there are people that have been doing things for 2, 3, 5, 10 years in expectations that this goal will eventually come, and they eventually receive it. And a lot of times we look at it and we go, man, how do I do that? Because you've been doing comedy for over 10 years now. And in the pre-interview, you just said like things have just started to happen in ways that you never even foresaw being able to occur. How has this journey been for you over these last 10 years? Because like I had mentioned earlier, like a lot of the times with the mission that my wife and I are on, we want to reach as many people as possible. We know that we're not where we want to be yet, but we know that we're somewhere along the journey, and we just need a little bit more patience and consistency in what we're doing. How's that been for you?
I continue when I get those feelings of, man, this person is speaking there. This person is speaking here. This person, I go back to my why. I have to go back to my why. My why is reaching one person. And it took me a time to get to that point where I'm reaching one person. I'm reaching one person. So now most of my gigs or most of my speaking engagements, people are saying, you have came to us highly recommended. So people are speaking for me. So I'm reaching that one, and that one is reaching folks for me, because I know me. I know I can get overwhelmed easily. And I tried not to use the spirit of comparison. That is a killer when it comes to being happy. Because you're looking at other folks' podcasts, you're looking at other folks speaking, you're looking at people going on tour at comedy clubs, you're looking at people, and you be like, what? But then I know me, I'm not going to no comedy club and doing no comedy no Friday, 2 shows on Saturday, and 2 shows and 1 show. That's 4 shows at I know me. So wanting something and not knowing yourself can kill you, because now you're losing your family, you're losing everything because you're chasing something that was not supposed to be for you. And I've learned that what is for me is for me. So I look at it as I go back to my why. And sometimes I have to change my why. Like, okay, now, Lord, now I want to go. I want to go and speak in Hawaii. I want to go and go through. But it's all in timing, because I go back and I look at those people that I have helped. And I know there's more to be helped, but I can't get caught up in the spirit of comparison. And I can't get caught up in not going back to my why. Why did I start doing this? I started doing this to reach one person and make them laugh. Now I'm booked locally and within a region of like 6, 7 states. Yeah, I'm always going, but as far as going, I don't know if I'll be able to do that, to go and do comedy, every weekend, 4, 5 shows. Nah, no. No. So I have friends that do that. And, we talk all the time. And I'm like, man, y'all, I love that y'all doing that. Nah, I love my wife. I can't just be, nah. Not saying they don't, but I'm just saying I just can't be away from her every weekend. And mm-mm.
I love that self-awareness that you're talking about. You're going, hey, this is the arena that I can currently operate in. Maybe one day it'll be a different arena, but I still have kids that are in college. I got kids close to home. I've got family. I've got my strong support group right here. This is where I want to be right now. And you're still accomplishing your why, And part of your reach is the podcast that you launched, Processing Traumatic Situations Differently. In your experience, what are some of the practical ways that veterans and civilians alike can process traumatic situations differently?
I would say find your why. Okay, find your why, and don't. And I go back to the spirit of comparison. Don't look at what someone else might be doing and be like, well, they're coping. Yeah, you see them coping, but you don't see them at home. You don't see the family might be all screwed up, but yeah, they out there doing their thing. You have to look at, what can I do? And I can do it consistently. And it would not overburden me. It would not overburden my family, and would not take me to a mental state to where I'm losing myself. Right now, if someone was to ask me to do something and me and my wife would sit down and we automatically go, how is this going to affect your mental? Because that's all I have right now. My mental is at a point where I'm not going to allow anything, any gig, any job, any big thing to mess that up, because I fought so hard to get it. So I would tell that person, find your why, start small, and say, how is everything that happens in my life, my mental is in there some kind of way, because I fought so hard to get it to where I am now. I'm not going to allow anything to allow me to get out of that to where I got to do all the work all over again. I do the work. I still do the work. I incorporate what's going to happen to my mental if I try to chase after this.
That's such a good practical tip, is to have those continuous evaluations. And I know part of my journey, and you mentioned part of your journey, is a strong connection to our faith. Somebody that keeps believing in keeps hope in God. How has faith played a role in your mental health journey and your mission to continue to help others?
I wear a T-shirt sometimes that says, "I talk to God and a therapist." Because people will get to the point where, well, if you go to church, if you got God, why you need anything else? That's maybe what you need. But I talk to God and a therapist. And I tell folks, I learned this from a gentleman, the God of your understanding. Okay. Your faith might not be my faith, but the God of your understanding, and just be practical in that. Everybody's not going to understand your journey. Everybody's not, and be okay with that. I had to be okay with people, with me going to church and me saying I'm a Christian. But why are you going to therapy then? I had people say that. Well, why are you going to, why you just can't? Because I talked to God and I asked God, what do I need to do? You know what he told me? Go talk to a therapist. They don't like that answer. They don't like that answer, because that's when you go back to the practical. We could get so caught up in spirituality that we don't even think about the practical. If your car is broke, okay, why you just don't take it to church and put it on the altar and say, hey, God fix? No, you take it to a mechanic. If your check engine light going in your head, you supposed to go to a therapist. So I try to be as practical as possible when I'm talking to people. I don't try to get too high. I don't try to get too low. I try to be practical. And I tell them, my faith is my faith. Your faith is your faith. We all in our own walk. But I talk to God and a therapist.
And I love that you brought that up, because mental health in church, from my experience, I feel is misunderstood. And there's never been any shame in seeking help in addition to faith. But I know, 2 years ago, when did I start therapy? 2011. So 2 years ago, after 11 years of continuous recovery without any breaks, having some difficulties here and there, I was at a low point again. I had overtaxed my system in an attempt to kind of do some self-imposed exposure therapy. My wife and I were traveling, so I removed myself from my support community, from my church, stayed in touch virtually, but physically we were all over the world trying things out. And I remember being at such a low point. And I was in the Word daily, I was praying daily, but one of the things that I had realized was that I was being so dependent upon tools that my therapist had given me when I had a physical community that I was around all the time. And so I sat there and I had to pray to God, and I was like, all right, you said you're going to be my healer in this. You said that you're going to take care of these things. Like, that's what Scripture tells me. That's what the community tells me. And so I had a prayer where I laid all of my burdens literally at his feet and said, okay, these tools are no longer useful. I'm going to trust in you. But I also did that with a virtual support group of veterans and regular check-ins with my doctor to say, okay, like, am I doing this right? And when we put certain checks and balances, like, one of the big things was, how's my daily hygiene?
Correct.
Am I taking care of myself daily? How's my eating habits? Because, like, if I'm doing unhealthy things, then am I really being healthy spiritually and mentally?
Correct. And one of the most powerful things, I had the church that I attend, we have our own mental health department.
That's amazing. What church is this?
Is the Mount in Chesapeake, Virginia. And we had a licensed therapist that worked at the church on staff. So to see that in your ministry is like, it's really okay to talk to someone. And our pastor, as the bishop at the time, he never shied away from saying, oh yes, I had to go and talk to a therapist, because it came from childhood. It came from a lot of stuff that we just have to, I'm trying to get an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to get an understanding. If I'm going to take a test and I don't understand, I go find me a tutor to help me. If I'm walking through life and I don't understand why I'm acting this way, I need to go and find out why. So I just try to be practical, and I like what you're saying. You got away from your support.
Yeah, I mean, I'm back home now. We're revamping, but even coming back was another traumatic experience or overwhelming experience. I don't even want to call it traumatic. It was just overwhelming to be back in Hawaii, have to reestablish, readjust. And so, one of the first things that I did, went to church, but I also went to the VA and made sure that I was tied in with my mental health therapist in person just to help guide me through yet another transitional phase. It's another person that I can trust that has experience in making sure that people are transitioning well. And then one of the things that came up in recent years that you're a big part of, and you can speak really to this because I want to hear about the work that they're doing. The USAA campaign, We Face the Fight, addresses suicide and mental health within the military and veteran community. Would you mind sharing a little bit about the roles that that's playing in fostering discussions like we're having?
Yes, yes. Through We Face the Fight, they're working to break the stigma surrounding suicide in the military community by raising awareness and fostering, this is the thing I like, real open conversations and support. That's the key, real. So they did not go out and get actors. They got real veterans like myself who went through trauma, who went through what they went through, got the help, but they are continuing the fight. And I don't know, to this day, someone sent me and told me, hey, you need to go and audition or go and put your information in for this campaign, We Face the Fight. I don't know who that person is. I wish I could find them. It was an inbox or something, and I've been looking for it. But it was a avenue again of serving my community. I was told that when I left the military, I had structure for 20 years. So when I left the military, I still needed structure. This Face to Fight is really another structure for us veterans to come together and talk and not feel like you're alone. So being able to be a part of this, we got involved with the My Cleats, My Calls with the NFL. I got a chance to talk to Hayden Hurst, who now plays for the Los Angeles Chargers. And we did an interview. We talked about his campaign. He talked about him coming, he wasn't military, but his suicide attempts and stuff and what he went through. So it's fostering real conversations around mental health awareness and suicide awareness to let veterans know you are not alone. You are stronger and we are stronger together. Because if you're not around, how can we be strong? We need you. We need you. And it's not a gimmick. It's not something USA just did to make money, because they're not. They are fostering real conversations for veterans for support and to let them know you are not alone.
It's such a great initiative too, because on their website, it's not like it's just like, oh, this is USAA's thing. They're bringing together a coalition of veteran service organizations, nonprofits, and one of the things that I do love about this community that is really focused on mental health is one of the first things that we learn is that this isn't a veteran or military centric problem. This is a community problem. 48% of people throughout the states are affected by suicide in one way or another, whether we know someone or whether we deal with the thoughts ourselves. And so, with those ongoing struggles and the tragic suicide rates that exist just at home and abroad, especially amongst service members, veterans, and first responders, I'd love to know, Vernard, what message of hope do you have for those that are currently going through their battle?
If you current going through your battle, I want to say not 2023, my biggest supporter, my cousin, died by suicide. He wasn't a veteran, but being someone that spoke about mental health awareness and suicide, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, why couldn't I save him? Why couldn't I be the one? So I had to come to grips with myself is like, I can't be everything for everybody. You have to be for yourself first. Get yourself, put your oxygen mask on first. Get yourself together. Let someone see you doing the work. Now, I would never understand or never get the closure with him, but I cherish the times that we had. The last text he gave me was, "You a certified fool." I love that now. That is my mantra. So I look at it as that. I looked at it right then and was like, wow, even with all the work I'm doing, you're not going to be able to save everyone, but you can save someone. That's what we got to get out of our mind, was like, I'm going to go out here and save the world. Save one. Let that one save someone else. Let that one save someone else. And don't get caught up in yourself and be like, I'm nothing. Every person has something to give. People commit or die by suicide because they want the pain to stop. Whatever that pain they're going through, you want it to end. But I'm telling you, if you're going through pain right now, look at me. I'm stigma. If you want to find out what is stigma, I am stigma. This is what stigma should look like. A person that's going to seek help, a person that's doing the work, a person that's still serving, a person that's fighting to be around. So when people say, hey, man, what is stigma? I'm stigma. You look good to be stigma. That's right. Stigma is going to be, we're going to turn what stigma is and stop being scared to say, I'll need help. I need to go get some help. And let's start asking people. Do not go up to people and say, hey, man, what's wrong with you? Because, Danny, if I ask you what's wrong with you, what's the first thing you're going to say?
Nothing.
Nothing is wrong with me. So let's change that wording. You know I'm a word changer. Let's change that word and say, hey, man, Danny, man, what happened to you? When I ask you what happened to you, you're more enlightened to say, man, listen, man, I was doing such, and such. I was deployments. But if I tell you, man, what's wrong? Because when you ask somebody what's wrong with you, your face all, man, what's wrong with
you? Just give it right back to them.
But if you ask, hey, man, what happened to you? With empathy and compassion. So that person who's out there, please don't give up. You have a plethora to give. You just have to do the work to get to that point.
Yeah. And there's so many of us out there facing the fight daily, So thank you so much for that message of hope, Vernard. And where can people find and connect with you?
You can find me at my website, www.thelaughtherapist.com. You can find me on all social media at The Laugh Therapist on Instagram. Me and my wife, my family, we do videos to give laughter throughout the day. That's just what we do. One day you might find me in Hawaii. Who knows? But
come on out.
But yeah, you can find me in all those places. You can go to wefacethefight.org and you can see my story, or you can see it on my website in www.thelaughtherapist.com. And this is not to take place of seeking help, going to a professional. Please do not take all this, be like, well, I don't need nobody help. I just heard what he said. No, if you need to go seek a professional help, please go do that too.
That's right. We want you to do all of it.
All of it.
There are many tools in our bag to be used. And Vernard, I truly appreciate your time here today, passing on your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you again for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, please remember you can also catch the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast on Wreaths Across America Radio, available on platforms like iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.